midweek through Holy Week is usually when we stop to pay some extra attention to Judas. He's come down in culture as someone who is just completely wrong, completely evil, completely bad. He was the betrayer, the one who who got money to send Jesus to the Pharisees and to ultimately his death. I remember as a kid, like the worst thing you could be called in Sunday school was a Judas, because it was someone you couldn't rely on, someone who would turn on you, someone who you thought you could trust. But as you get older, you really, all of us have to develop a richer understanding. Superficial, silly versions of people just don't suffice anymore, because we learn to know that people are not one thing. I mean, kids are smart enough to know that too. They just don't know how to articulate it necessarily. But the church has a really bad habit of just staying in an ideological hole with various characters: Judas, Mary Magdalene, even Mary of Bethany, Mary of Martha, Mary of Nazareth. They're all pigeonholed. The complexity of who they were as parents, as people, or in the process of Mary of Nazareth as a mother, like, we don't really examine those things. But Judas is one who has particularly come in for bad press because we don't give him space. Wednesday of Holy Week allows us that space. And I mentioned when I was weeks ago, when I was first highlighting the fact that this was coming up and that we were going to be, what we're going to be looking at as our Lenten study, and what we were going to be influencing the reflections here on Holy Week, is that I had watched Jesus Christ Superstar. I believe it's John Legend's version of it that I can only find on YouTube, and believe me, I get no kickbacks for that kind of reference or recommendation. And I was struck by it. I mean, I've seen this musical numerous times. I've seen it live. I've seen the original movie production. I've seen Scary Spice's version of it in London. A number of versions, but there's something about the way it was portrayed in John Legend's version of Jesus Christ Superstar. I don't even know that I recognize the name of the actor who played the role of Judas, but there's a pathos there in his portrayal, a real struggle. He didn't just do this because he was greedy. And of course, the Luke version of the story doesn't have the exchange of money. That's something that is uniquely Matthew. We just have a man in Luke, in the Gospel of Luke, who is afraid of what's going to happen. In many ways, Judas is more the average person, more mature person than any of the other followers up to that point in time, because they're all still, Peter, John, James, they're all still very much blindly following. Don't tell me the bad stuff. I don't want to hear the bad stuff. We're all going to get through it. It's going to be great. Real people are not that naive. They're not that simplistic. Judas was complicated. He saw, much like the Pharisees, what was going on. And although I am completely convinced he believed in the world Jesus was talking about, the God's promise of equality and collectivity, Judas lived in this world, and he saw the economic disparity. He saw the power disparity. He saw that Jesus was heading towards death, and his way of not having that happen wasn't saying, "Oh no, we can't be part of that." It was actually doing something about it. He thought genuinely that his friend needed help, that he needed someone else, someone with bigger force, because at this point in time, Jesus had all of these people around him, basically accepting whatever he had to say, very little challenge. But Judas found himself in that position of challenge, and he asked for help, and he asked for help in the wrong place. And it's not that he wasn't able to want the promise that Jesus was sharing with everybody. It's that he could not see a path. How many churches, how many church people actually fall into that place? We say someone is a Judas to dismiss them, but the reality is almost everybody in churchland, even me, is Judas. People who believe to the best of their ability, but still put themselves firmly in the box of pragmatics. They can't let go that what if we're wrong? That they don't have blind faith. And it's not that Peter even had blind faith. There's a naivete in that that doesn't put him juxtaposed Judas at all. There's an immaturity in the way Peter approaches things. Judas is not someone who is given to naivety. He's someone who really believes in the promise, but thinks they got off the track, thinks they got off the rails, and he's wanting to do something about it. It's only after he realizes the level of lie that he was given that in Matthew, again, we don't have the story in Luke, he finally takes his life with the absolute cruelty that he has unleashed unwittingly. We need to sit with Judas more than anybody else. The Holy Week story, the Easter story, gives us more than just Jesus. Yeah, Jesus is the focus, and I'm not going to dismiss that, but Holy Week story is also Judas's story. Just the same way Easter story is Mary Magdalene's story. Both mature in their faith, both working very, very hard to help the vision happen, both in their ways, stuck in their culture, restricted in what they can handle. For Judas, he had the privilege of being a man who could actually speak directly to those in temple authority, which to him as a Hebrew were the real authority. He didn't have any respect for the Romans, I suspect. He had respect for the leaders of his faith, and he thought they could be trusted. It's a story that is repeated over and over and over again. So before we are quick to condemn, before we are quick to jump, before we are quick to condemn the possible outcome, we need to take a little bit of time. Is this a Judas moment for us? Or are these Judas people? People who will betray us simply because they say the right things and we're desperate to believe that they're going to be honest. I've found in my time, especially when I was younger, an incredible naivety to believe people in church land at what they said. That's all Judas did. Remember, he was not older. He was not like Peter, already had a mother-in-law and was married and doing whatever. As far as we know, Judas was still one of the younger ones. But he wanted to protect his friend, and he did not see anybody else in the crowd stepping up to do that. And he did it in probably what he thought was an expedient way, but definitely with compassion. We cannot dismiss Judas as a cartoon villain. It's not fair. It doesn't work for the character. He did what he believed. Now, whether we go with the version in John where Jesus knew all about what was Judas is going to do, or we deal with the version in the synoptics that it's a complete surprise, that's a matter of preference. But to dismiss Judas as just a bad guy is to miss the wealth, the richness of what he can teach us. Is he teaching us to trust the visionary? Maybe. Is he teaching us that pragmatism can be a hindrance in vision? Absolutely. Is he showing us what it means to have that anguish of what you believe is pragmatics versus what you really, really want to be true? That's on full display. Take some time with Judas. Just sit with that. Identifying the Judases in your own life is not necessarily a bad or insulting thing. They might not get it, but this is your journey, not theirs. Learn from this man. He has probably more depth to teach us about the story of Holy Week and resurrection than any other of the male followers that Jesus had. He teaches us what it looks like before any of this happens. Mary Magdalene teaches us what happens after, but Judas teaches us before. How to trust in a world where a lot of those visions just simply do not get realized, and people pay the price. In his attempt to prevent the real end, he brought it along faster. But he did it with the authenticity that he thought others were sharing with him. They weren't. But he did it from a good place.